Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub Podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Marek, back in January, Royal Mail announced its new CEO. That was some months after Rico Back was either dumped or left. Take your pick. Either way, he wasn't in the hot seat anymore at the British National Postal Operator. The new bloke, former Ocado executive Simon Thompson. Now, a lot of articles written about it mentioned things like parcels and innovation and all of that sort of stuff that you'd expect. But Marek, a new CEO coming into the organisation, even though I think he was on the board previously, so was involved in the organisation. He's not completely new to the organisation. What's going to be top of his agenda right now? I mean, you're a former CEO of DPD, whatever, right? So what will be top of your agenda if you were stepping into the hot seat? What would you be saying? Well, these are the things we've got to start thinking about as an organisation. These are the action points.
I think one of the big challenges that anyone in that hot seat faces is the fact that it's not a typical corporation. You've got so many stakeholders. You've got to make a lot of people happy, which isn't easy. And there's a lot of, I would say, very long-standing grudges around. So it's not going to be easy, but I would say two things. First of all, he's got to have a plan that is workable, will get a tick from enough of the stakeholders to carry it along. And then it's about charisma, getting these guys and girls on board. And the problem is that even if there was a plan like that in the past, and I can't debate because I haven't seen what plans Rico had, there certainly wasn't the get people on board.
You can't underestimate what you just said though, Marek, because I've heard that from other executives recently saying, well, how do we get people on board with this? I heard it from, I won't name names because but I heard it a couple of years ago from a postal executive saying, how do we get the unions on board? They were that blunt. They said, we want to move forward, we need to get the unions on board. Other people term it differently. They say, we need to get our people on the board to make them feel that they are part of this. And that's difficult in a big organisation, and it's difficult to achieve if you're not actually able to, sort of look people in the eye. Marek, I don't know if I've really explained. Do you know what I mean by that?
Ian, I know exactly what you mean, and I think you and I are pretty well placed to discuss this because you spent half your life in a post office, and you know what people look at, and I think it's about walking the talk. So the question I would have to most of these postal CEOs who say they don't have the people on board: when was the last time that they drove with a postman or courier? When I was running DPD, I had a rule that every year, minimum one day, each member of the board, whether it was the finance director or the CEO, spent a day with a courier, because no one will then tell you that you don't understand what the job is about.
Yep.
And that's a small thing, Ian, but it really counts a lot. The second thing, and I'm not saying that these are the only things, but these are examples. When I was in situ, even when I was a regional head with 16 countries, the office I was in, first thing in the morning, I would go and walk through the warehouse. Not because I was such a guru that I would see everything, but people would see me there and know that they were important. And the final thing, and this is really important, when there's bad news, share it openly with people, ask for their views. And I'll just share this one really, I think, pertinent example. One of the most difficult things I've had in my life was to turn around a business that was losing over 50 cents in the dollar. And honestly, I looked at the plan and I knew there's no way I could do it without people, all the people, taking a hefty hit in their salaries. And that's not easy. And the only idea I had, and everyone said, Marek, you're crazy. I had a town hall meeting, all of the guys, top and bottom, and I showed them the results and I said, look, the only way I think we can do this is everyone takes a cut, including myself. And if anyone's got a better idea, please stand up. And guess what? How many people backed out and said they wouldn't support the plan?
I'm guessing zero.
So I think it's state of mind. It's about winning the hearts of the guys and girls, because then there's a chance. And let's hope that the new guy, Mr. Thompson, is going to be able to do that.
Let me just share another little thing with you, Marek. And so anyone who's been to our workshops over the years will have heard Marek talk about this idea. I don't know if granularity is the right word or responsibility, but the person who's at the top needs to understand the problems that are at the bottom. And you've told the story about when you're at Amazon, Marek, about how it doesn't matter, if you're the vice president of such and such, you can expect a phone call. You want to tell that story?
I can tell the story. Literally, I was VP Amazon Logistics Europe, and I would get calls or mails to explain why in depot 3 or 4, Mr. Jones or Mr. Kowalski cut their finger, not cut their finger off, but cut their finger. It was that level of detail.
And I think this is a really important point, because that is missing in some postal operators. And they are big organisations. I wouldn't honestly expect the CEO of Royal Mail to know the name of every postie, right? But if they go out with a postie once a year, they're going to understand a bit better what's really going on out there. Because some of the big ideas that people have in boardrooms, when they're translated into a boots on the ground initiative, there's often a disconnect between how we put you like your military history, Marek. What kind of analogy would you give it here?
I would give an analogy that it's, George Patton, the guy who's out there in the front of the troops. If you win their hearts and you can be tough, but the people know you're with them and you live by the same rules, you will win. And I think I just need to say one thing with the Amazon story. I think that's too much detail, because I think it's important that the average guy and girl in the organization should know that the CEO cares whether they cut their finger, but not necessarily that he spends hours of every day checking on that, because then he can't do other things. But it should be that it's important, and it should be that he or she is engaged, and it should be that they understand what happens. Because the most dangerous thing for me is when the CEO has a complete disconnect, lives in an ivory tower, and doesn't really see what's happening at the shop floor, because it's the shop floor that's delivering the service.
And we often hear cliches like, our people are our strength, and those sorts of things coming out of the boardrooms of various corporations around the world. But that is how you have to actually connect. And just on that topic of connection, one of the problems I've seen with a lot of big organizations, including posts, is that at that grassroots level, things don't fit together nicely. Now, if you think about a postal operator, a regular postal operator, not Royal Mail, a regular postal operator, it'll have delivery people, it'll have post offices, it might have parcel lockers. All those things have to function together. Now, with Royal Mail and the post office are now two separate entities, and there's a whole story behind that. And of course, Post Office UK has now got a non-exclusive agreement with Royal Mail. Another challenge, it's a challenge for Royal Mail, I think, possibly more than for Post Office UK. However, my point here is that the CEO has to make sure that he's not being sold a line, basically, by the middle managers in between him or her and the posties, right? They have to make sure that they're able to cut through that and understand what's really going on. And they have to make sure that all those things that are out there, Pudos, parcel lockers, the different networks, actually work together. Now, it sounds banal that some guy like me sitting in his living room is saying that. Yet, why should I have to say it, Marek?
Absolutely. And I think you're spot on there. And I think the key thing for me would be what I mentioned earlier, to have this plan and to be able to sell it. But there's something else. He's going to need a very strong right-hand man or woman who really knows the business inside out, so that he is getting the right information, that there are no pork pies going out there, and that he's taking decisions based on correct information. The final thing, because there is a silver lining of sorts, which is the GLS network, which has been pretty successful. And I think it's important that they understand, first of all, why it was successful, but also they're going to need to move that organization, because GLS's success can be its weakness now, because it was a very standardized, very efficient organization designed fundamentally for B2B volumes. That is going to need to change. So in a way, on one hand, it's a silver lining, but if they don't watch out, that's going to suddenly become yet another problem.
Well, what do you think at home? At home, in the office, on the train, wherever you are. Let us know below. Comment below. Tell us what you think about the challenges that are facing the new CEO at Royal Mail. Marek, we've run out of time. We've got to wrap it up here. Marek Różycki, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody.